Joining me now is Senator Adam Schiff, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which of course oversees the FBI. Okay, where to begin? What's your thoughts on those Kash Patel stories?
This is what happens when you take someone who is completely incompetent and you put them in charge of what had been the premier law enforcement agency in the country. He was so unqualified for this position. His only real qualification is that he was willing to do anything Trump wanted. But that doesn't substitute for being competent at your job. So we've had embarrassment after embarrassment after embarrassment. If these latest allegations are true, it goes beyond embarrassing to potential violations of the law. If he is misappropriating federal funds to pay off people in the Bureau or elsewhere, that is a very serious matter. He could find himself under investigation. So you wonder how many embarrassments to the president is he willing to take before he does something. The president, I think, values Patel and his, just dogged determination to do anything the president wants. But right now, he's doing something the president doesn't want, which is continually drawing attention to himself with embarrassing activity that compromises investigations.
My mind goes to some very dark places when I think about this question, but why do you think the president keeps him around?
Well, he doesn't want anyone of stature in these positions, nobody that can stand up to him. He certainly doesn't want a Mueller or a Comey or someone of that kind of gravitas. He wants someone who will do his bidding. He wants someone that he can manipulate, that won't challenge him in any way. And that's Patel. That's why he was chosen. He was the guy when he was on a staffer on House Intel that would do Devin Nunes dirty work, and now he's willing to do dirty work for the president. That's why he's kept around. But he's been embarrassment on the Epstein files and created problems there, promising that the FBI director had the black book on his desk, and then he becomes the FBI director, and suddenly there's no black book. So it is just a continual embarrassment to the country, to the president, but more important, our public safety is sacrificed by this, by his premature announcements in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and now the premature, credit claiming, but investigation potentially compromising statements about this latest plot on the UFC fight.
It is. There's a lot to work with. Should the Democrats be in the majority and decide to investigate or look into Patel? You are one of the many people who have been targeted by Trump's Justice Department under Trump's direction, as we've all seen it. Another person who announced yesterday that he was being targeted is, of course, Governor Gavin Newsom. I know you spoke with some of my colleagues about that last night. But I wonder, as we're thinking about, because we've been talking about the Georgia races tonight, we've been talking about politics, as we think about if Democrats have the majority next year, you're on the Judiciary Committee, Trump is still going to target his political enemies. He's not going to stop. He's going to have people in the Department of Justice that does that. What changes? What can a Senate majority do to kind of hold them to account or even stop that?
Well, we will, of course, do oversight of the administration. But judging from his first term, when we subpoenaed, for example, administration officials in the Russia or Ukraine investigations, they basically stonewalled the subpoenas. In fact, Trump was impeached in that first impeachment, not just for trying to extort Zelensky to get him to help cheat in the election, but also because he was stonewalling congressional subpoenas. So I don't think we can expect a whole lot from the administration, but we can subpoena the private sector, and they will need to comply. So all of the crypto deals and meme coin dinners, the UFC fight, all the back channeling on the Paramount Skydance and Warner Brothers mergers, where there were promises made of changing editorial content, all of that kind of corruption, potential corruption, we will be able to look into.
Iran is such a big topic, but I got to ask you about it because we were just talking about this, and I saw the same quote where a White House official told CNN that people shouldn't read too much into the language of the MOU. This was an anonymous quote to CNN about the agreement that the administration announced, describing it as a political document. I thought that was so telling. What should people understand about what is and isn't actually happening here?
Well, when the administration's best line about their own deal is don't read too much into it.
Yeah.
Don't expect too much out of it. What we're going to show you whenever we deem you worthy of seeing it is a political document, so don't pay attention to it. what you should really pay attention to is not anything the Iranians are willing to sign, but it is some kind of private commitments we've gotten. Well, we've seen the administration, the president's representations about how eager the Iranians are for this or how much the Iranians want that. It's all turned out to be BS. So what can we really conclude from what we're about to see? This vague document, this political document? Well, it appears they're not willing to stand behind it. It doesn't say very much. It is basically an agreement to agree at some later point in time. And it shouldn't give really any confidence that there's any of the difficult diplomacy that's been done or that is likely to be done in the next 60 days. Hard to see how this ends well. It sounds like it will either end in a face-saving non-agreement 60 days from now or a resumption of war.
Senator Adam Schiff, thank you. As always, we spanned the gamut there. We covered a lot. Thank you for being here.